Hello everyone, welcome to the video. My name is Maze, and in this video I'm going to continue to work on the picture frame urn 2.0. In the last video I made the repository, which is basically the box that holds the ashes, so check that out if you haven't already, especially if you want to learn how to size an urn and how big an urn needs to be. And in this video I'm going to be working on the picture frame, and then the next video I'll work on the aesthetics of this urn. So look out for that when it comes out, and subscribe if you aren't already so you don't miss it. So with that out of the way, let's make some dust. So the first thing I needed to do was mill up my lumber. So I went over to the table saw and cut out 2 pieces of cherry, each long enough to get one length and one width of my frame. And then headed over to the planer and planed them down to a 1/2 inch. And one of the reasons why I'm doing one length and one width on one board at a time is because my planer doesn't like anything smaller than 16 inches. So instead of cutting those before, I just keep them together so I could plane it, and then afterwards I can cut them apart. So if your planer has a safety margin, you might want to think about that ahead of time and not cut your pieces to final length until after you've put them through the planer. And then the final part of the milling was to router out a rabbet that was 1/4 inch deep and 1/4 inch wide, so that the glass and picture will have a place to sit. Then it was time to make the frame. Now with all the urns that I do, I always want to do some part of it by hand. It just feels respectful and a way that as a craftsman I could honor the person who's going to rest here by kind of saying I could do this with machines, but as a sign of respect and a way to honor the fact that this is not just a box or a piece of furniture, but something that's going to house someone's mortal remains. I'm going to do it the long way and kind of lift up that time and that extra work to the soul of the departed in hopes they may find peace. It may seem kind of silly, but I like to do that, and I think it's important to do with urns. So since the picture frame is kind of the focal point of the urn, I decided to do that by hand. And the only thing that makes this possible for me and my skill level is the shooting board. Without that, I would not be able to get my miters good enough to be somebody's, urn by hand. So for me, it's a necessity. And I always try to make it slightly bigger than necessary and kind of fine tune it down to what I hope is the perfect fit. And as you could see, I had the glass already and I put tape around it to keep it from getting scratched, and I just sized my frame to that. And then I could glue it up. And I use tape for my clamps. I usually use tape for my clamps for my frames. I find that if your miters are good, that tape works just as good as clamps for frames if you do it right. And because it's going to be glued to the repository, I don't have to worry about splines or reinforcing the miters because the repository itself will do that. After that had dried, I needed to create a way to be able to put the picture and the glass in the frame after it was glued to the repository. So I routed out a channel in the bottom of the frame so that you could slide the glass and the picture in there. And it's going to be hidden by the bottom of the urn that's going to screw on. And that way you could unscrew it and you could take out the picture and change it whenever you want to, or you could replace the glass if it ever breaks. So then I lined up my centers and I marked out the excess on the frame and took it over to the scroll saw and cut out the extra. I stayed real proud of my line. I did not want to cut into it, and I'm going to flush it up later on. At this point I decided the inside edge needed something, so I used the router and I just gave it a small chamfer, and then after that was done, the router leaves the corner kind of rounded off, so I used a file to sharpen up that corner. And then it was time for the glue up, and it was really important that it was centered, so I used my center lines and made sure that everything was nice and lined up before I tightened the clamps, and I clamped it down. Then the last thing to do was to flush everything up, and that was the frame done. So that's where we're going to leave off, and be sure to subscribe and come back next time where I will decorate this urn and give it a little bit of character. And that's the video. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this, ring that bell for notifications, and maybe watch another one of my videos. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of my work or some sneak peeks, and stay tuned for my website, which I'm currently building. So thanks for watching, and don't forget, support your local craftsmen or get out in your workshops and make your own dust. And together we can make making great again.